Okay, bows and bow ties. So look, it's been a minute since I've done a regular live from home, but I just wanted to continue on my thoughts. I couldn't finish this morning. I wanted to talk about the decentering and the divestment in the 4B movement. Okay, so I just want to put up here what a manifesto is. It's a public declaration let's try this again. It's a public declaration of policy and aims, especially one issued before an election by a political party or candidate, right? That's kind of like what you'll see like in one of the definitions. But I wrote down this one today. Let me take this off. A public declaration of principles, intentions, goals issued by a group or individual inspired to invoke a change, a bold statement, like a rallying cry or call to arms. Now, I generally don't have an issue with a manifesto, okay? And, but what hey, you know I'm on this live. See, my kids are doing too much. Okay. Anyway, so my point is, I don't typically have an issue with a manifesto until it becomes an issue, right? Because you can have public declarations or whatever that are inspiring and all kinds of stuff. But my concern with this divesting and decentering and the 4B movement is the way our climate is today. We typically take something and then it's been co opted. It's kind of like the old feminism. It originally started off because, there's four waves, or is there five? I think there's four waves. And it started off basically just saying, like, hey, we want equality. We want the right to vote. You had women's suffrage. You had all these things, right? And then it morphed into some other stuff. I don't have my notes, but it morphed into more on the lines of, I think, civil rights. And then there's some other things that came with it. But see, when I look at this whole divestment and decentering and the 4B movement, I feel like because we have this gender war that I was in denial about, like about 4 or 5 years ago. What is that noise? Well, that's my microwave doing that. Anyway, so I feel like because we have this crazy gender war going on, right? I'm like, okay, I feel like there's so much built up anger and hurt, and there's a little bit of psychoness going on. What's happening is what is meant for good turns out to be not so good. So when I was writing down a couple of quick notes, I didn't have a whole lot of time. I wrote down a couple of notes, and earlier this morning I talked about the divestment movement. And so if you look like me, that's basically where people were removing their preference or their preference for dating men who look like me, and they were opening up their options. But the way it was coming off was they were only dating other people and not men who look like me. Do you understand the nuance? Oh my gosh, guys, I am literally live. So I'm trying to get my kids to be quiet. So this is the thing. The whole purpose originally, from my understanding, with the whole divestment thing was to basically open your options. But you had a bunch of women who were frustrated and angry who looked like me. It was like, don't date black men, don't marry black men, or whatever, right? Which, when you think about it, was kind of like this precursor to the 4B movement. So then you get this whole decentering men. And I thought it was interesting because they're talking about decentering men, but all the reasons that they were talking about decentering men, they were hyper focused on men. So it was almost like an oxymoron. Decenter men, because men, 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 men and men and men. I'm like, okay, hold on a second. I'm going to have to say something. Okay, I'm back. So then you got a whole bunch of people who were saying, and they're still saying, so the sentiment, which on the surface is actually good, right? They're saying, look, you're not going to just center men in your lives, right? So ideally, what that I think that's supposed to mean is, hey, focus on yourself and do other things, and don't make men your entire reason for your existence. But what I hear people saying is decenter men because men are this and men are that, and you can learn how to fix your own stuff. And I'm like, it's not sounding like, hey, decenter men because you want to take time to make sure that you are grounded, that you're spiritually grounded, that you're emotionally grounded, that you're financially grounded, that you figure out who you are and who you want to be and what you want to achieve. There's been a few who may have said those things, but I'm not hearing a lot of that. I'm hearing a lot of like decenter men because, and now I'm inserting my opinion here. It was like, I'm mad. All these men ain't this, and I'm making money. And when I listen to them, they are finding comfort in their money. They're finding comfort. And so there's something to be said for financial security. But I hear a lot of my money in these activities. And I'm like, okay, but what? There's multiple things happening here. From what I think I'm hearing, it sounds like, you know what? Is it light, right? Why do I look so orange? Oh my goodness, I look like 45. So much of what I'm hearing when I hear these women like, well, we've got jobs and we've got this. I'm like, okay, but what it sounds like, it sounds more like what I'm hearing is if you want to be part of this decentering movement, this divestment movement, right? You need to have money. It sounds a little exclusionary actually, because when you listen to what's being said, you need to hear more of the meat of it. And I'm hearing a lot of the material. I've had more money than I've ever had, and I don't need a man for this, and I have a house. And it's like all these material things, and that's great. But what about the woman who's going through whatever she's going through, right? And who doesn't have a lot of money? Maybe she had a baby early on. Who knows? Maybe she was forced to take care of her family at a young age for a variety of reasons and didn't get a chance to pursue her hopes, her dreams, her passions, her education, right? And so when I hear these women hyper focus on decentering men, I'm not, it's not sounding inclusive of other women. Number one, it sounds like you need to have money because much of their conversation is centered around their money, their homes, whatever. It's not much of what I hear about the person, the personal growth. Okay. I want to make this clear. And the very thing that they say they want to decenter themselves from, much of their conversation is all about the men. I have a comment. Oh, hey, what's up, Derek? And so I'm like, all right. So, like I said, we started off with the divestment, then it went to decentering, and now my new fave, the 4B movement. So this was popularized or started in Korea, South Korea in 2019. Let me get my notes here. And basically, what they're advocating is no marriage to men, no sex with men, no babies with men, and no dating or boyfriends with men. And so, and their whole purpose, sorry, what did I write down here? Now, I'm getting old. I'm getting old. Okay. Hold on a second. Let me get my life together. Their whole purpose for this was they want to oppose the state, well, the South Korean country, right? So the state or nation state. They want to oppose the state's view of a woman's body being only useful to the state. Their reproduction is used for securing the state's future. Now, when you think about what's going on in Korea and to some extent China, you're seeing a large decrease in the population, right? Women are fed up. They're fed up. No, 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 no. Like that's all I hear for the 4B movement, right? It's a little bit of a throwback to Deborah Cox. So what you're seeing now is that there's a bunch of women who are frustrated with the state, and now it's starting to make its way over here into the United States, right? And I'm sure in other places of the world, but I'm trying to lend a level of specificity here to the United States, and even more specific to women who look like me. But it's not just women who look like me. So now we've gone from divestment from black men to decentering men, of which they're hyper focused on men. And it seems like the only way to be part of this club, which seems to be exclusive actually, when you listen to the things that they talk about, are it's their money, it's their homes. I've had more money than I've ever had, and I've got a home, and I do these activities. Well, when you think about what's undergirding it, you have to be financially capable. You have to have a lot of money to do a lot of the things they talk about. Now, when you think about the average woman who's been going through whatever she's going through, many of these women are not going to be able to go jet set. So can they not be part of the decentering thing? So, and then you move on to the 4B movement, where they're just kind of like at the point where they're saying, we don't need men. We're not interested in procreating. We're not interested in securing the needs of the state. We're not interested in anything from men. They're now at the point where they're saying, we don't want you as friends. We don't want any interaction from you whatsoever. And so, what I wanted to do was talk about how these movements are becoming harmful because the way the genders are setting it the F off right now, everybody's pissed off. You can't take something in good faith and then let it ride in good faith. These movements get co-opted. Like I said earlier, feminism at its purest was basically meant to like, hey, look, we're equal. Doesn't mean, I mean we're different, but there's equality. We want equal rights in terms of, voting and owning homes and having a bank account or whatever. But then it's been co-opted by all this other stuff. And now when you look at it, it's got like identity stuff thrown in there, like men are women and women are women, and you can't define women. There's a whole situation. But I want to get back to the divestment thing. So this is what I think, and I wrote down a few things. Number one, I think that the divestment portion of that started off being very harmful because what it did was it started off by demonizing. Now I'm speaking about the people who look like me. Okay. It started demonizing Black men. Now, for those of you who know me, I don't cape for men because they got some mess about them too. But I like to talk to the women because I'm a woman and I want to have women conversations, right? The men got their own stuff that they haven't figured out yet. And it's secondhand embarrassment right now. It's so embarrassing. But I can't fix the men. That's for men to check the men because they're not listening to women anyway because it's a whole bunch of hate. So men have to check men. And women, we have to engage with each other. And there's going to be some fighting involved. There's going to be some loving, hopefully some loving involved too, right? And we're going to disagree and we're going to agree. And there's going to be a whole bunch of shenanigans. But when they were talking about divestment, what they did was they demonized a whole group of dudes. Men ain't this. Black men don't like Black women. Now, there's not to say that there wasn't some thread of truth in there, right? Because even though there are Black men with Black women, there was a lot of colorism and featureism and all kinds of things that was going on, continue to go on in the community. All we have to do is look at a small subculture of our athletes. Well, what does arrival look like? Or what does, like, look at our entertainers or whatever. What does it mean to arrive and who was on your arm? I don't want to go down that road. So we demonized all of these men. And so now you've got men, like, first of all, I find it hilarious that you got a whole bunch of men up there creating these stupid podcasts, except I'm like, well, my podcast is amazing, right? But like, you got these men up here on these stages, can't even convey intelligently what they're really trying to say. They're just sitting up there arguing with women all the time. And I'm like, y'all sit there and talk about women, but I'm like, you're acting like what you think a woman is. You're acting just like it. It is so embarrassing and so cringeworthy. And like, they think they're doing it. They think they're doing it. But nevertheless, it doesn't mean that all the things they say are wrong. But I'm not here to cape for the dudes because they're a mess. So what we did was we had a bunch of women talk about divesting. And what they did was they demonized the men and they were like, it's just oppressive. And it doesn't mean that some of the stuff that they're saying isn't true. But what they're doing is they're painting with a broad brush, basically all the relationships. So now I'm sitting here like, well, I guess I'm impressed by my husband. And I'm like, y'all know I got a whole lot of mouth, like a whole lot. So I just felt like what they did was they painted Black relationships, Black love relationships as unhealthy. And are there some unhealthy ones? Absolutely. But when you say something over and over and over, and everybody says the internet isn't real, and to some extent I agree, but I'm like, wait a second. A whole lot of people are still out here on social media. Somebody's consuming this content, right? So you've got people saying the same things over and over and over again. And you get these young, impressionable minds who are coming out here, men and women, listening to the same shenanigans, getting caught up. Like they're getting all caught up. They're like, yeah, these men ain't anything. I'm like, oh, you haven't lived long enough. So we demonized them. Then we broad brushed the relationships. Black love is all struggle love. I'm like, well, I didn't know I was struggling. But it doesn't mean that there isn't a struggle love component to it, right? But I'm like, heck, it's everybody's not in a struggle love situation. But if you put it out here all the time, it sounds like, look, black women, now we're gonna free ourselves. Because if you get with that black guy over there, let me tell you, he's not gonna want you if he's successful. He's gonna go get Becky with the good hair. And if he doesn't get her, you're gonna struggle. And you're gonna be depressed, and he's gonna cheat on you. This is the message that we're putting out here to these young women. So now, this is why I said like that the divestment movement was harmful. So then it was very dismissive of other realities, very dismissive. So if you try to counter with like, well, you know what, you're seeing these relationships that are not successful. But what if I told you that I've seen many successful relationships? It doesn't mean that people don't go through hard times. But I'm talking about successful relationships. There's growing pains in relationships. They were very dismissive. They're like, this is why I had to go get Chad. I don't think there's anything wrong with Chad, actually. And just to be honest, I don't see a problem with dating outside of your race. But there's a caveat. You have to go into it with your eyes wide open, and you both have to recognize that you have these biases because we live here in the United States. And then you work through them and understand that not everybody is going to look at your relationship and be altruistic and full of love. Now, getting back to the divestment thing, they were saying like, don't be with the black guy. And then they'll tear down relationships. Look what happened with Simone Biles. She was like, she is in love with Jonathan Owens. I know his name now. Jonathan Owens. This is the thing. And this is what I would say, and I've said it in other videos. Were there red flags in some of the things he said? Yeah. Mm-hmm. But what I don't want to do is get out here on Jesus's internet and sit there and tear down this relationship. So when I said, if I make a comment like, well, there was something about her that he really liked, even though that whole interview thing, when I finally listened to, well, the clips or whatever it was full of shenanigans. And people are like, oh, it makes you a pick me or whatever, if you agree with that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, there's no winning. So they'll say like, divest from black men because they're going to do these things. And then when a black man chooses a woman, by the way, she was not ambiguous. She was a regular black woman who I thought was really pretty, but that wasn't good enough because they went down the bunny trail and they got in that man's social media or whatever it was that they found what they found. And they're like, well, he only liked the non-black women. I don't know. And I'm just kind of like, but right now he's finding comfort in this black woman right here. This is the one he wants. And instead of tearing down these relationships and telling you to divest from black men, well, wait a second. Why don't we try to give these young people some tools to be successful? Like, hey, you don't have to put all your information out there for public consumption. Because there were hella women who got out there and was like, see, this is why you can't. Oh my goodness. And most of these women were single women. They were going to sit there. Hold on, let me yell at my daughter for being really loud. Okay, I'm back. So anyway, they went out, like one of the things that we should have been telling them was like, hey, let me give you some tips. Let's nurture you so that you can be successful. These women would rather tear that young lady down, and they tore that guy a new hind part. And let me tell you something, he kind of sort of deserved it. But nevertheless, I'm like, that's not for that. I'm like, that's when they should have stepped aside and just wished them all the luck and then provide some constructive criticism. But I'm going down a bunny trail. I don't need to go down. So anyway, I feel like the divestment movement was actually kind of harmful. It was harmful because it wasn't meant to. The way I took it was, it should have been, hey, don't just stay married to the idea of having to be with a black guy. Get married to the idea of being with a guy who rocks with you and loves you and who wants you to win and whatever that means. And you know that maybe you have to deal with this small barrier, maybe of race, but there are people out there who are like, look, I don't get all of it, but I'm willing to get to work through it, and let's work it out. But I like you. I've met some of these people. And now, look, I know many people are going to have opinions on that. That's neither here nor there. Argue with yourself. So, look, I thought that divestment movement was really harmful. It was discouraging young ladies from finding love within their own community. And then there was all this conversation back and forth because you had the whacked out weirdos, the men in from part of the manosphere, who was like, they're not gonna want you, they don't want you. And I was sitting there thinking, like, are you kidding me? If you only knew what many of us black women knew, because we don't tell you, okay? They're like, you don't have any options. These are the kind of things that they would say, and they believed it. And I'm like, okay, this divestment movement wasn't working. So now we're going to move past the divestment movement. I thought the decentering, this is the thing about the decentering movement that's driving me crazy. I don't feel I don't think they know. The women who are saying this, I think the majority of them are just talking. They're just talking because I don't think they get what decentering men means, because their entire conversation is still about men. If you're decentering men, this is what I think. You want to show, especially if I'm going to say, I'm picking on a single woman for a minute, because that video I did like a week and a half ago, it set it off on the internet. Y'all were like in your feelings about what did I even call that video? But yeah, the single women are unhappy. I think that's the one I called it, or something like that. I'm like, look, if you're decentering men, I'm like, does that mean you're centering women? No, I'm just joking. It's a little jokey joke. But look, it was like, okay, single women, if you are upset at the men, why are you? There's little salvos, there's strays that married women were taking. And I'm like, wait a second. Your whole goal is to share how singleness can be good too, right? Hold on. Why is my daughter so loud? So, my whole thing was, I felt like single women were getting out there trying to convince the world how why you shouldn't be with a man. Okay. And there was a whole lot of they were attacking marriages, and you got the ones who were out here decentering men, but they were talking about men. They were like, men, 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 and more men, 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 men. All right. And what I'm saying is, if you're going to decenter men and you're going to promote singleness, what you want to do is say, ladies, let me talk to you about why I have found a new level of joy that comes from within, and how I am spiritually grounded. I have found that when I spent time really getting to know myself and love myself, that my anxiety went away, whatever it is, right? That's the stuff that you want to talk about. What I'm finding is when people say they want to decenter men, one, it's men, men, men. There's more and more men. Number two, somehow married women end up taking salvos. We're catching strays. And number three, it's more about everyone talking about how since they were single, they get to do all these activities and they've had more money than they've ever had. So I'm like, okay, but I'm married and combined income. And yes, there was a period of time when I was a stay-at-home mom, but I'm doing fine. I'm not missing any meals, as you can tell by my situation right here, right? I just came back from Puerto Rico in February. And I have some other plans, but you usually don't know about them until after I've already completed them, then you find out about them. I'm just sitting here thinking, like, that's what I'm hearing. I'm not hearing about the personal growth, the personal satisfaction, maybe the increase in good health, mental, physical, spiritual, financial. I'm not hearing about how they affected someone, right? I'm not hearing about how they were able to influence someone. I'm hearing, I ain't got to deal with those kids. Who's to say that some women, they love serving their family, their children, whatever. They love it. They love it. There's some who really relish being in that role. I'm somewhere in between. Well, not really, but but so anyway, when I think about the people who are talking about decentering, I think actually the decentering movement actually became harmful because they're promoting separation from men. Yeah, I got a couple of notes on here. They're promoting separation from men, not, centering yourself. They're promoting division. There's nuance here. They'll say they're not, but listen to what they're saying. Um, they usually talk about all their negative experiences. They talk about how they like to prioritize their self and their mental health. And I think that's okay. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But usually they somehow turn around and start talking about men, men, men. Um, I hear them promoting, and this is what I'm hearing as far as sentiment. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I've been wrong before, I'll be wrong again. It sounds like they're promoting singlehood as the option versus an alternative. And I know it seems like I'm splitting hairs, but I feel like you should be able to just say, look, if you happen to be single, you know what? Being single can be an amazing state of being too. Not you should remain single because these men ain't it. You know what I'm saying, right? So there's nuance there. I want to move on. I've seen stuff where people were saying that being in a relationship is a scam. I didn't know I was being scammed. I didn't know I was being scammed. You know, I'm happy with my husband. And look, maybe he's playing me and I don't even know it. So it is what it is. Let me move on. Um, they're basically saying that there's no benefit to being married for women. I think that's interesting. And they base it off a whole bunch of negative things that have happened in the past, or maybe people that they know. And I'm sure there's some data, depending on if you understand how data is collected, if you understand how to analyze the data and understand data science, which a lot of people don't understand. But, so now they go into this whole thing, about, oh, there's no benefit, women are not benefiting from it. And that doesn't mean that what some of the things they're saying aren't true. I want to be clear because I don't think that women are have it all wrong. I just think that they're making a broad brush across a lot of things. Um, they're painting women who want to be in relationships as desperate. And I actually disagree with that. I feel like you can be a fully formed woman, independent, autonomous, and everything, and still want to be in a relationship. And I don't think it makes you desperate. Yes, there are desperate women, but wanting companionship and love and to be in a covenant, why does that make you desperate? Why does it make you desperate? Why is it so terrible to utter those words to affirm the fact that you're like, you know what, I want to be married, or I want to have children with my husband, or whatever. They paint it as desperation. And I have a sneaky suspicion that I think if many of them had that, they wouldn't be talking like this. They wouldn't be promoting this because they would have it. Now, let me just say, I recognize that I'm on the other side of the coin, right? I was single once. I got married at 32 or 33. I didn't get married in my 20s. You know what I did? Believe it or not, I was decentering men. I was traveling. I was exploring my creativity within my home, within my mind. I was taking up activities, right? Yes, I had a lucrative job, okay? But and I had come through some heartache. My heart was broken. And after all of that, let me move this. I never was like, men ain't this. I still wanted what I wanted, but I also prioritized some of the things that I wanted for myself. I feel like my lips look really matte here. Mm, Good. Give myself a little bit of a gloss. I don't know why I'm going through this phase where I'm really liking these like darker red, like reddish kind of lipsticks. But come spring, I'll probably be like hot pink or something. I don't know. I'm going through a phase. Anyway, I digress. So anyway, I thought it was really that the decentering men. I thought that was harmful actually, because basically what we did was we stereotyped men as these awful people who a whole bunch of things, right? And some of it I get. Like honestly, I get the fact that when women say like they don't like modern women, but none of these men are traditional, but they want these traditional women. I understand what women are saying, and I'm gonna be honest. I'm right there with you, sister. I mean, like I get it. I get that frustration, but to go in on all men. And so I basically feel like when you decenter men, what they're saying is they want separation. It wasn't about centering yourself, it was more like separation from men. And so it becomes this zero sum game. Zero sum. Yeah. I think like what happens is it's like now we can't deal with you, which makes sense as I lead into this my next point or shortly the 4B movement. But I just feel like a lot of it's talking about what they don't want versus what they want. This very same arguments that you have for the men who are saying what they don't want in a black woman versus what they want in something else is the very same thing that I'm hearing when I hear them talk about divestment and decentering. And then when you say, what do you want? What do you like? It's like, I like my money, I like my house and my activities. Okay. So what happens if you're a single woman and you don't have a lot of money? Can they decenter men? Because the way they're talking about decentering men, it's a lot about their activities and their money and their home. And it's separation from men. It's not about who they are as a person, how they're centering themselves, how they're trying to grow themselves, etc. This is the harm. And what we're doing is we're further creating a divide between the sexes. Um, anyway, let me move on to the 4B. Getting back to the 4B, for those of you who are, catching this at a weird point, the 4B movement again is came from South Korea. It talks about saying no to marriage with men, sex with men, babies with men, and dating men or having boyfriends. It's basically a form of decentering men. But these women are all about like, let's just be with ourselves, everything for ourselves. And it sounds like they don't want to have men in society. They're like, we don't need you, and we're not going to do anything. You're not going to use our bodies for procreation. No, you will not use our bodies. This is how they're feeling, and is making its way here. So when you think about it, I just felt like um The ladies, sorry, I wanted to go back. The ladies in at least from what I've seen online in South Korea, they're talking about they're tired of having less pay. They're tired of these ridiculous beauty standards or beauty norms. They're tired of a whole bunch of things. I think they were calling it the abandon the corset movement or whatever movement or something like that. It reminds me of like what was going on in the 60s or whatever. And they're like, burn your bra, you know. It's like, okay, burn your bras. But I I don't know. I think the 4B movement is harmful because it's really advocating for people for women to separate themselves from men. And so we're seeing this play out. And I don't think the 4B movement was the primary reason for what I'm going to say, but I think it definitely was a contributor as far as now we're seeing in developed nations and in Asian nations, the population decline is radical. South Korea has a population replacement rate of like 0.65, 0.7. You're supposed to have a 2.1 birth ratio to women or something like that in order to replace the population. They're not even at one. China has fallen. The United States is at like 1.65, and it's going backwards. Women are saying, look, I can't afford to raise a child at this point because I'm tired. The cost to raise a child is really high, and I don't want to deal with the men. So this 4B movement, I mean, is basically starting to make its way over here. I'm at the point where I'm like, is it encouraging like same-sex relationships? I mean, because these women clearly are just like not feeling the man. I don't know. So the way I look at it is like this. I feel like where I was going with it was when I said the decenter, the divestment, and the 4B movement were harmful. I feel like the purpose for what they were originally intended for gets co-opted by people who are angry, and it starts to act like a video or verbal manifesto. And going back to let me go back to my original. Manifestos are those public declarations of principles and intentions, goals issued by a group or individual inspired to invoke a change. It's a bold statement. It's like a rallying cry or a call to arms. I feel like that's what a lot of these movements are becoming. Manifestos. They're basically saying, you know what? Let's screw mankind or whatever it is, right? And I'm exaggerating. They're like, no more men. You know what? If you're not going to listen to us, then we are not. And I understand, but I also think there's a skewed way of how to handle it, right? So now there's no room for reconciliation. There's no room for common ground. There's no room for compromise. There's no room for meeting in the middle. Now, am I saying that women should be in bad relationships? No. Am I saying that women should be in relationships where they're suffering from domestic violence? No. Am I saying that women should engage in having children and being basically the only one taking care of the child? No. And I'm not advocating for that, and I don't want anybody to go take that and go run with it. That's not what I'm saying. But now we're at the point where women are like, I don't want to deal with you at all. See, with the passport bros, they were like, I can't get my way. I have low self-esteem. I can't provide. So what I'll do is I'll call you a woman of the night, and you're so modern. And they couldn't see their flaws, right? Because these guys had these blind spots. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go someplace else where they'll put up with these things. But with these movements they're like separating themselves from men altogether. They don't care where you come from, what you look like. They're like, I don't want to deal with you, period. And that, I think, is also quite dangerous. We're building up a hatred. We're building up a hatred, and I feel like I'm repeating myself because I am, but like the battle of the sexes thing is getting out of control. It's out of control. No one likes anyone. No one trusts anyone. And the way I look at it at this point, the only way things are going to change is going to start with you. It's got to be grassroots. I think our youth, I think everybody needs to get off of these podcasts and videos, except for mine, of course, because perfect in every way and can practically do no wrong. I think you should watch all of my videos. But I think we need to get off of these podcasts. Definitely these men need to get off of these podcasts. It is so embarrassing seeing all of these dudes up there, and I just have to swipe now. They're up there thinking that they're like dropping knowledge and stuff, and they sound so stupid. It just seems like boilerplate. Give them a microphone and a couple of rusty couches, and they're up there just yammering on about things. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so embarrassing. And it's like, I'm trying to figure out, like, what is your value? Like, this is what you're talking about over and over again, these relationship questions over and over again, instead of something meaningful. So anyway, that's where I'm at with it. I don't really have anything else to say other than you should go ahead and like this video, and then you should go ahead and subscribe, and then tell all your friends and your aunties and your cousins to go watch this video and every single one of my videos. Binge watch them because they're amazing. All right. Have a good one.